Hey everyone, Yumi here. Just a quick edit before the video starts. Initially speaking, this video was recorded way earlier than before, but I didn't get the chance to post it during the time when the whole candidate censorship fiasco happened when they revealed the design of the candidates and this video. I know this video's posted way late, but I know this is gonna be an oncoming drama that's pretty much gonna go around in the coming weeks because again, we're like 3 months away from this game's Japanese release, and I know this is probably going to be a debate topic. Again, I know that the drama has kind of sort of died down, but considering the fact that people are still arguing about this, I might as well talk about it anyway. So yeah, that's what I'm just say before the video starts. So I hope you enjoy the video. It's a bit of a long rant, but I hope you stick around for the entire video. And yeah, just at least listen to what I have to say if you're not at least gonna stay there for the whole entire thing. All right, peace.
Oh, this is something new. I never ever considered ever, never in the world did I ever consider making a video about like a new series that I've played but never talked about on my channel on a negative note. But considering the fact that again you saw my PFP and you thought that I did Neptunia content, I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't done anything Neptunia related in like the past 16 years ever since I started YouTube. So I guess this should be a starting point. However, this is not going to be a good starting point as this video is mostly going to be more of like a rant video, especially about recent events. And this is mostly about like the, you know, Neptune Unlimited stuff. So I have a fair bit to say about this. And I'm not going to be honest with you. This is mostly going to be like a more negative video where I'm going to against like both sides of the community because I'm going to be honest with you. The reception to like the designs of like the characters now, as you know, it hasn't been like really positive for both sides. For again, the people who are for the people who are okay with the censorship and the people who are against the censorship of the CPU, the CPUs and the CPU candidates. So TLDR, last Thursday, one of a user in the Neptunia community on Twitter showed the new designs for the CPU candidates, which I'm pretty sure you have all seen by now. However, while the reception to the original CPUs was fine, however, no one was ready for like the shitstorm that was like the candidate design because like the moment that came out, people I guess straight up lost their shit and like just straight up attacking the people that's pretty much just lost their shit and like was just all out like alright saying that yeah, this isn't it. This is pretty much just gonna be like the end of the series and like it was pretty much just whole lot of accusations, victim blaming, and like it was pretty much just shit flinging contest for this past week. So much so to the point where I pretty much got sick of it. And I'm gonna make this video because again, while I didn't really participate in this drama, again, I just pretty much showed people like what was going on and why people are mad about the designs. Because again, before I pretty much make some takes in the video where like people are going to say like I'm pissed or not, I just want to come out and say right now that again I am a degenerate. Again, I'm not claiming to be like for against the censorship because again I am mad that again the designs the CPU designs that we pretty much know for like a long time had to get censored, but again a sacrifice had to be made and someone had to bend the knee. Again, it's not something that a lot of people are for, but again, considering recent events and how much like especially now we're in a world that people are mostly hypercritical about like the portrayal of women in video games as in like people don't want like women to be like really showing that much body anymore because again shames women for body shaming so much so that again characters pretty much had to be nerfed in a lot of media. For example, Rouge from Sonic recently got a nerf, especially when she came back in Dream Team. They pretty much took away that power of her, and again, people rightfully got mad out of it because again, it took away an essential power of Rouge's character. Again, you can pretty much just boil down Rouge the back in Sonic to me most like a fan service character. But the thing about Rouge was that even though Rouge was mostly like the adult, one of the adult Sonic characters who acted a little mischievous and flirty, there was a whole lot more to her than just her being like an adult flirty agent for guns. She was a lot more than that. She had heart and she was also understandable of her friends and even her rival Knuckles. However, what's and this also translates to Neptunia as well because again, the thing about Neptunia fan service is that I will admit and say that right now that the thing with Neptunia fan service is that fan service was also a part of like Neptunia because ever since the first game released in 2010, again that really hard first game, you could pretty much tell that something was going on. Sure, the game didn't have the best story and there are like a lot of like really rough areas in it, but like the gameplay was fun, the characters were charming, and the designs was something that people got used to. So again, when you pretty much announce that like you're pretty much just changing the designs, a lot of people are pretty much gonna get mad at it, and people fairly got mad at it, and outright said that yeah, this is not really it. However, there are also people who said they're pretty much fine with the designs, and this is where I have a problem, especially for the people for a certain reason why I'll bring up earlier. Now, while people did say that the designs were not okay to the point where like they say that this might be the point where they're no longer gonna engage in the Neptunia series, which again is fine. Again, you're entitled to your opinion, but people also said they weren't affected with the censorship, which again makes sense because again the thing with Neptunia is that the stories are really rough in Neptunia. Like I will admit that most of the Neptunia stories are nonsensical. Again, that's a common point that people use, especially for the fan service arguments. Because again, my problem with like the anti-censorship people is that they use this as an excuse to say that oh, Neptunia has no story, so therefore it's mostly like an excuse to like go into their characters. I guess again, this not really like apply to everybody, but like it's more so like again it was like a defense that people really had because again when you consider that this is the same fandom on Twitter who like outright expresses their rather questionable love for some of the characters, which I'll get into a bit. Again, the characters you pretty much see on screen are pretty much the culprits for this shit. And yeah, I'm not even gonna be honest here. Like I will get to that in a bit. Like when you consider the fact that this is like the same fandom, especially like the West, that outright especially their love for characters in such an uncomfortable way, it's not really a surprise that people pretty much act the way that they did. But like it pretty much came to a point where like someone had to like criticize Tsunako's work and like they modified the designs to be less, ugly, I guess. But even then, all they pretty much did was just remove a few parts and pretty much call it a day. Like they didn't even do like a design overall. They just pretty much remove some parts and call it a day. Again, I'm not really a fan of you outright saying someone's work is bad. Again, it's pretty much fine to like disagree and say that someone's work is not a part, but like outright just changing it because again you say the design is ugly is that's not it. But still, a lot of people were really on the fence about the design changes, and weirdly enough, it wasn't for the characters that you think it is. Again, I think that outrage was mostly targeted towards the CPU candidates, and this is where things get a little bit rough. especially with certain part of the fandom. Now, I'm pretty sure anyone who is a fan of any of the Louis goddesses pretty much know what I'm about to say, and this is where things got a bit rough. So, the defense for the characters were like, okay, Uni, Uni was mostly the culprit because again she got a design change, and Easy was the worst one, especially when it came to design change. But then people were also the same for Rama and Ram, and like people are also then questioning why, and then it pretty much then became a point of alright them saying that, oh, Neptunia is for, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this. The difference was that Neptunia was for lolicons. And look, say what you want about fictional content, and while you may deny and make a rebuttal and say that, oh, technically speaking, this isn't true, Neptunia, as a series which is mostly a satire of the gaming industry, has pretty much made references to pretty much whatever you can think of. Again, this is pretty much the same series that has like, you know, like traces of like uh same sex characters liking each other, especially in like the Rebirth games, and even in like Mega Dimension and Rebirth 2, they pretty much made some form of lolly reference here and there, especially the infamous scene in Rebirth 2 that again was pretty much the reason why. Again, not really a surprise that the Rebirth series didn't even make it to the West, considering that one scene that I'm pretty sure most Net fans know in Rebirth 2 with CW with CFW Trick, which pretty much made him one of our most hated characters in the fandom. Again, I'm just saying, but like again, this was pretty much the main argument for this whole debate, and it got pretty much crazy to the point where like people asked, people expressed their disdain of it, and like the people who were, I guess, the censorship were going against the people who were pro censorship, saying that, oh, why are you against this? Again, this is pretty much what the series has embraced. And like they were using the Louis twins so hard to pretty much prove the point that it became like, dude, like again, I'm not really gonna like again, I'm not really gonna like judge you again. Feel free in what you want to believe, but like I feel like part of the reason why things got bad as this is that people won't admit to the fact that they're going like, look, I'm just gonna be honest with you here. I could give less of a fuck of what you pretty much going to. Again, that's pretty much not my business. But like the fact that you guys will pretty much end up being disingenuous to like prove a point that you don't have to pretty much excuse your fact that you pretty much want to like go into Neptunia characters. Like, look, at the end of the day, this is pretty much like a series that like most people just seen as like, the plot is not there. So again, me going into these me going into Nep characters is like nothing because again, like the fandom don't really take it seriously, and it's like they pretty much see it as a edgy series. And I'm going to be honest with you, I might be one of the people who would say this, but ever since I picked up a Neptunia series way like 2017ish, I never really saw it as a HG series. Again, this was pretty much a franchise where like you could pretty much tell like the story was not like really taken seriously because in the Neptunia games, while is it technically true that there was some semblance of story as again games were pretty much just like retelling of world events, but again it's pretty much personification with like game consoles in anime human form. It was pretty much just a commentary of whatever happened in the gaming industry in that certain period. For example, with Sisters of Sisters, it was pretty much a commentary of like what happened in the 2020s with like COVID and people on their phones and people being in their homes because again people are unable to come to work and all that. And I think it pretty much did a good enough job well, and it's pretty much what people are looking for in a series like this. Again, I doubt that the average Neptunia fan who just wants to like play the games will most likely just play the games anyway without really thinking about it. Because when you really think about it, Net fans pretty much play the games because again they like the characters. Sure, the story really isn't the best in the world, but again, I don't really think that like Again, the story isn't the best in the world, but for what you're getting, I think you pretty much have a memorable time with these characters because again, part of the charm of Neptunia is getting to see these characters interact with one another, make your own scenes in your head of what this character will do, what this character will do to say on another, which has pretty much inspired many fan creations and many fan works, which is something that I do appreciate. So look, the story isn't the best in the world, that I'll say, but like to outright just say that this series has like no story, which I'm going to be honest with you, I find a bit disingenuous because again, obviously these games had to like had somewhere. Again, I don't really think that the designers the again I don't really think that the concept designers for the writers for this game just decided that yeah, we're just gonna make these characters appear with no story whatsoever. I mean, obviously they had to like exist with a narrative for you to actually care for these characters, which they did. Again, it wasn't the best, but they did with what they had. And while they're not really exactly top tier material, especially for like anime game stories, they pretty much did what they were given with, and some came out great, some were hits, and some were misses. But again, I think you can pretty much tell which games in the series, especially with all the games that you pretty much have now, which were hits and which were misses. Again, I think you're pretty much able to figure it out for yourself. So again, to say that Neptunia has no story as an excuse just for you to go into these characters is like, bro, at this point, why don't you just admit that you just want to go into the characters? And even then, even with like the whole Gunin and fan service argument, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is pretty much just one of those things where like on one hand I get it, but on the other it's like one of those things where like the thing that you're even defending now, it's not even as good as it used to be. Like, listen, say what you want about Neptune fan service, but like even then they just recently toned it down because the thing about the fan service thing is that ever since Neptune Sarah and Kagura crossover, there hasn't been like that much fan service because again, the last three Neptunia games, well, I guess Neptunia Dogu doesn't count because again there was the swimsuit fiasco, but I mean that never came to the West. I mean that was the time where this series got hit with like the no, we're not gonna like localize this on the Rebirth trilogy. So the two games that pretty much came out at that time, Sisters vs. Sisters and Game Maker, there was like little to no fan service. And I guess that's technically all the fan service that you pretty much got was like shots, live 2D shots of the characters, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't really a split scenes like the first four mainline games on the consoles way back then. And even then, these games are pretty much tame. And look, even on the topic of Neptunian fan service, like Neptunia's fan service is mostly on the tamer side, especially considering the fact that now there are like so many games these days that have like way riskier stuff, and they've gone with way more stuff than Neptunia ever did in like the last few years. Again, one game that I could pretty much name on the top of my head that like pretty much puts the last few years of this game's whole fan service to shame is Genkai Tokyo 7 Pirates. Now, that game was also on the VR, like the Neptunia Rebirth trilogy. Again, that game was, I believe, it was a Japanese exclusive game. It got ported over to the Switch, and let me tell you right now. Again, I know that many people don't really like it. Again, when they're a fan of a certain game, and like you ask them to play another, but again, you only really need to play like 15 minutes. Like, not okay, look, not even 15 minutes. You already need to play 30 minutes of the game, and what the game outright does with like what you're given is crazy because like the amount of shit you can get away in that game alone pretty much puts the last 5 years of this franchise to shame. So again, even with the fan service argument, you're pretty much just sending something that is just straight up like weak sauce. So It's like I don't even know. And like the people who are arguing and saying that like Neptunia's just like no, Neptunia's blue archive. Like Neptunia is just a version of Neptunia's like blue archive where like the characters are basically like most of the characters are just the small girls where like even then that doesn't even make up most of the Neptunia roster. Again, this is like a series where like most of the roster is pretty much like adult women, and even then the amount of like younger characters are like something that you can pretty much just count on one hand. So again, I see what point people are making out of this, but again, I don't really think that this is something that you should be really be saying about. Again, say what you want about fictional content, but I think this is something that people just took a narrative with, and it pretty much just became so annoying on either side that I was for again. I was I was anti-censorship because again, the thing with censorship is that you shouldn't allow it to happen because again, this is pretty much just one of those things where like you give them an inch and they go a mile, and it's not just one of those things where you can pretty much just stick your hand in the sand and say that oh, you know what, this thing doesn't really bother me, and I like the characters, the senior characters for the way they are. So again, I'm not really gonna mind the whole censorship argument because again, it does affect me. Again, you can say that sure, but like it doesn't even know the fact that still you're pretty much gonna have to deal with this from henceforth because again, you pretty much know that every Neptunia character, if if Neptunia Unlimited is supposed to be starting a new era for Neptunia, and like characters are pretty much gonna get reintroduced after this game, you pretty much bet your ass that when Plugia, Pico, and Uzume come, they're getting hell on earth, especially Iris Heart, because again, she is easily the worst of the original goddesses when it comes to like she is easily the worst of their original goddesses when it comes to like the whole risky thing because again her whole identity is how Sega was really edgy in back in the day, and the other goddesses too. If supposedly they're coming back like Maho, Jaga, Rigi, Ridio, and PP, assuming they ever get acknowledged again. Again, it's fine, but again, if the discussion for the CPU candidates were that bad, you could only pretty much imagine how bad it was gonna be, especially if they pretty much announced that other characters were coming back. But even then, I don't really think that other characters are even gonna come back because again, we pretty much got like information for the season pass as well, and it turns out that they're not even doing anything with the season pass because again, it's just a bunch of scenarios and items. And I'm going to be honest with you, that season pass was easily one of the saddest season passes I've ever seen for any game. Like they didn't even like really give you anything worth your money. It's just basically, oh, we're just straight up giving you nothing. Like have fun have fun with these random events, random sub events, and random items, and you're not getting anyone new. And considering the fact that again, this is pretty much the same series that Darwin acknowledged most of the characters that love ever since Mega Dimension and Rebirth 3. Considering that those are the last 2 years where you could pretty much play as like a huge chunk of the career cast, and ever since then it's pretty much just been like Noir, Nep, Blanc, Vert, and then it pretty much became them and Netgear, Uni, Rom, and Ram. And ever since then, that's pretty much how it's been ever since. So again, for Sia, Rouge, Lola, and her other twin, I would be actually be surprised if they ever get acknowledged or ever get treatment again after this game comes up, assuming if they're even kind to even remember them. But that being said, this whole discussion was rough. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really think that this discussion was. This discussion should not have spiraled out of control in the first place. Again, most of the Neptunia creators who even make content for Neptunia have already said just stuff about this game and pretty much dipped. Like, again, this was pretty much just something where like we just needed to say that you're for or against the censorship and pretty much just leave. However, people just straight up made a mess out of the drummer, and it pretty much just got so bad to the point where I just straight up didn't even care anymore. I just wanted like, those situations like that people just straight up argue so much to the point where you just pretty much just want like both sides to shut up. Again, because when it pretty much came around to like day two of the drama, I couldn't really care anymore. Like I just wanted this to die. I just wanted to like look at cute Nep stuff, but like going on like Twitter every day and seeing people argue and bitch about stuff and people calling out people weirdos when like this fan base has like a really unhinged problem again with some of the characters, and it's like, bro, could you all just please like stop and go back to like Chanel making fun of this franchise again? It's like, yeah. And at that point I was like done. I was like, yeah, I have to make this video. So that being said, again, I just want to really, against I'm not for the censorship. Again, I'm pretty much mad for how things have been treated. And in terms of the characters themselves, I think most of them are fine in their human forms. Again, the only real offenders of the designs that I'm not really appreciative are Noir, Blanc's design, which I think really misses a huge part of the next form, especially not having the have is a huge turn for me. Uni, who I believe is a common consensus of like having the worst design. I think Uni has like the worst design. Well, mainly the worst human design. And when it pretty much comes to like the new characters for the game, I think Seal's CPU design is a little weak. It's more of the basic side for me. Again, I get what they're pretty much going for the dress, and however, I will admit that that's not my taste. However, for Ciel, human form is fine. For Rouge, I do like Red Heart design a lot. I really like it right of the Switch. And Lola and her twin, and especially Eclipse Heart design is also a fan favorite one. Again, if you pretty much want the tier list for all the human and CPU designs, here you go. But other than that, that's pretty much it. And with that being said, I'm pretty much clearing my hands on the situation. Again, I pretty much only made this video because again I pretty much got tired of people just straight up bitching for videos, and I just wanted to speak my truth on the my I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents on the matter. So yeah, with that being said, that's pretty much it. Again, hopefully I never have to make another video about this again because again this was just pretty much just tiring to talk about, and I just want a moment of peace. So yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you, even after still making this video, I'm still livid. So again, normally most content creators don't really encourage this, but if you wanna find in the comments about like outfits in the anime game, go ahead. Again, I don't know what to say anymore. And honestly speaking, I wouldn't be surprised if this lasts throughout until the game releases. However, before I end this video, I want to talk one more thing, and that is the future of Neptunia. Now, one thing that people have arrested is that this is pretty much going to be the end of Neptunia, and Neptunia Unlimited is going to be the end of Neptunia itself. And to that, I say, are you serious, bro? Okay, look, now I'm not trying to say that again. It's not built to, because again, usually the thing about games is that sometimes when games often turn into the higher ups, the game ends up being affected by the fan base who supports the game, and the game can pretty much go EOS, end of service. But again, the thing is that like anime games usually have this like weird stick where like they could pretty much survive, especially with censorship. Again, take a look at Genshin. When like the monster characters got nerfed, especially like Mona, Rosario, and Jin, did it stop people from playing Genshin Impact? No, the game still got popular. It still had players coming in, and sure, some of the characters did get nerfed uh, and design changes, and by that they got new dresses and looks, but it didn't stop people from playing those characters, and the game still thrives. And again, the fact that people are just straight up doom posting about something that we don't even know the fate is set in stone, because for all that we know, maybe you could pretty much get the original outfits for all the characters in the game. Considering the fact that again, this game is pretty much using the same models from Sister versus Sister from and Game Maker. So again, I wouldn't see the reason why you're maybe you can get the outfits in the game, maybe they will turn out DLC. Again, we don't know. And the whole thing is that people are just straight up making baseless accusations for something that we don't even know. Like for sure, maybe you could get the outfits, maybe you could not. But for people already saying that this could be the end of Neptunia, like again, I highly doubt that Neptunia is going to die, because again, this is pretty much like a DF factories and couples are golden goose. And like assuming, okay, look, let's say assuming this is supposedly the end of Neptunia, like Neptunia Unlimited does bad, and like this ship flops so hard that Neptunia just flat out tanks, and like they have to pretty much put Neptunia on the show for a few years. It's probably gonna get like merch, and people are still gonna buy it up. So it's like some way, shape, or form, it's still gonna thrive. Like again, I understand, but I think this is a little bit much. Again, considering the fact that I've been enough on the internet to know that again, whenever someone tries to say that, oh, we should boycott this game because again, they're not our friends, and we should outright boycott them because they're doing something that we pretty much ate. It never ends up well. Again, take a look at what people did when people were against like stuff like uh Legend ZA and Mario Kart Tour World when those games came out. Fans outright detested those two games and outright said they're not going to support them. Did it stop people from buying the game? No. Even though many people didn't like the way that the games were being handled, it didn't really stop people from buying those games, because again, the people who are going to buy the games are pretty much going to buy them anyway. And the thing with like people on Twitter is that they usually think that they're the center of everything, when they again it's pretty much just a vocal minority. So again, like I said earlier, the people who are pretty much gonna buy these games, regardless, are pretty much gonna buy them because they like Neptunia to begin with. Again, I don't really think that censorship is gonna be like a big deal for much of them, even though some of them are gonna be slightly pissed about it. But at the end of the day, it's not gonna be the world for some, and for some, it is gonna be the end of the world. But like this over like this over exaggeration of saying that, oh, this is gonna be the end of the team. Like, to be honest, the only real thing that's pretty much going to be ended is some people's liking of the series, and I think that's pretty much fine, because again, you're not really like going to be sticking with every series that you pretty much meet throughout your life. Again, there are going to be some times where like you have to end up leaving a series due to personal disdain, or the fact that the series isn't the way that you envisioned it when you met the series for the first time. I think that's perfectly fine. Hell, I pretty much quit my first show of franchises because, again, they're pretty much no longer the series that I pretty much knew them to be, and that's perfectly fine. So that being said, however, I do get what both sides are trying to do. I do get what both sides are trying to say, but still, I think that this is pretty much just one of those situations where everyone wants a bit bonkers and outright just made a mountain out of a molehill and just straight off embarrass yourselves for like the whole past week to the point where I was like, it's really, really hard to really look at what people say right now. Again, like this is like again, it's not really surprising. Like, bro, you can pretty much go to Neptunia Twitter nowadays and see like the most like crazy things. Like there was I shit you not a fucking Neptunia blowjob trailer. It's like guys, what are you even doing? So it's like at this point, I'm not really surprised anymore. But again, I'm not really gonna like engage in like the drama anymore because I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm just kind of like tired at this point, and I just want to like chill and like go back to the fandom that I once knew for just making you know cute stuff and not have to deal with like this constant back and forth bitching for something that is already set in stone. Again, it kind of sucks that things have to be this way, but again, at some point, a line had to be drawn, and I guess this is pretty much the way of doing it. Again, it's not something that much people would appreciate, but if this is how the series is supposed to go from here on out, I can see a lot of people not sticking out of it. And honestly speaking, it's completely fair. So yeah. That being said, that's pretty much all I have to say for this video. And my thoughts on the whole censorship drama. Again, not really like the best way to start off talking about a series that you have not done for content in a while, but again, this was pretty much unavoidable. Again, I thought this was pretty much gonna be a lot more like, oh, okay, I'm not really a fan of this and whatnot, but it really spiraled out of control, and I think it pretty much just came to a point where it was outright way worse than it pretty much was. So, with that being said, that's pretty much gonna be it from me. Again, thank you guys for listening to this guy ramble about anime girls for half an hour. Like, that's crazy. Again, I should probably script these videos so I have like a clear, concise thought of what I had to say. But other than that, that's pretty much gonna be it for me. So yeah, thank you guys here for hearing me out, and I'll see you guys next time when I have something positive to say. So yeah, until then, peace out.